All right, hello and welcome. We are live for episode 13 of the World Map Podcast, which is your weekly dose of everything in the world that could be on the map in terms of video games, entertainment, technology, TV, movies, comic books, tabletop, general nerdery. It's all here. Also, we talk a lot about meat on this podcast. Joining me this week is everyone's well, he was missing last week, but he is back. We found him. It is the one and only, everyone's favorite Birdman attorney at law, Mr. Josh Clark, aka Clunkster.
Hello, and I was indeed missing in action, in spite of the fact that I am not the actor that played in that movie.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's an actual movie came out in the 80s called Missing in Action.
That sounds like it would be a Jackie Chan movie.
It is not a Jackie Chan movie, but you'll never guess who played in it.
You're right. I won't.
Let's just say that he has a fist hidden in his beard. Chuck Norris. Or I am completely wrong, but that's what I.
No, that sounds very Chuck Norrisy. I could see that being a movie he was in.
Yes.
But, those were some. There were a lot of great like kung fu sort of martial arts movies back in the 80s and 90s. Man, we don't now. Everything's like so action packed and like guns and lasers and whatever. But man, there were just some good straight up fighting movies back in the day.
I know. It seems like they're, dare I say, missing in action.
Indeed. I guess I could also introduce myself, your other host for the World Map Podcast, Josh DeLong, a.k.a. JD, a.k.a. James Sorius, a.k.a. Thunder Hokey. And together with my colleagues here, Clark and typically Nick and some other guests join us from time to time. But this week we're going to do a duo show. We're gonna double up on this one and tag team it. So it's probably about time we could just jump right into a little section we call the backlog.
And I'm so excited for it. I'm not even eating something this time.
I can't believe you're not having your normal 3 snacks per podcast.
Well, I didn't go grocery shopping yet, although I did have a Java chip frappuccino just a little bit ago. I thought I would save it for the start of the podcast, but...
Oh, so the JCF button on the side is Java Chip Frappuccino, not Josh Clark's Frappuccino.
Oh, you know what? It's for both, and that's why I always choose it. Actually, I didn't even see that written there. You have a good eye.
I got a great eye. Yeah, it's these glasses I got on right here. I've also got an eye out for questions. Last week we had several live viewers and some Q&A going on during the live Google Hangouts. So if anyone has Q&A stuff they want to throw our way, we'll be sure to keep an eye out on the feed there to answer those. But let's go ahead and talk about what we've been playing this week. And I tell you what, it's tough for me to believe there's anything in the world right now other than Rocket League.
Yeah, it is probably my favorite game in a long time. And it's is it safe to call it a sports game?
I guess it's kind of a sports game in a way, yeah.
You know, I found the first sports game I like.
All right, yeah. Certainly, yeah. I mean, we've talked about it, a couple weeks in a row now. We went really in depth last week, talking about the time, the previous night when you and I and Nick had done a great 3-on-3 match, and we dominated some people. But yeah, I've sat down to play so many other things this week, and I've got some things to talk about that I've played, but it's been in spurts because most of my time has just gone right back to Rocket League. It's just so fun. I always think I'm going to fire something else up, and I'm drawn right back in.
Yeah, I see you have it there in the background ready for you as soon as you're done with the podcast.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've just got my car doing donuts there waiting on me to jump in it and win a match.
Nice.
Yeah. So some other stuff I've been playing, I told the story last week of how I scored a great deal on an Xbox One. So if you missed that show, go back and listen to the podcast because I saved about $147 off MSRP for the Halo Master Chief Collection bundle that I got. And I told the story there about the simple way to do that. But this week I've actually had a chance to fire it up and play a little bit of Halo: The Master Chief Collection, as well as a little game that launched with the Xbox One that you haven't heard much about recently, probably, and that game is Titanfall.
Yes.
I don't know. Have you ever played either of those games?
Titanfall?
Or Master Chief Collection?
I have played many of the original games that
Sure.
make up the Master Chief Collection, so in a way I can say maybe for that one. Titanfall, I always wanted to play it, but I unfortunately do not have access to an Xbox One, although I do have an Xbox, the first one, but it doesn't, but it doesn't play Titanfall.
Yeah, even though it is the first Xbox. I don't know. I'm
Yes.
still scratching my head over that naming convention. It's almost worse than Wii U. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about these games, and because I think everybody kind of knows what they're about. But Master Chief Collection is interesting. You've got Halos 1, 2, Halo 2 Anniversary Edition, and the original Halo Anniversary Edition. You can play through the campaigns, but the maps from all of them and the game modes are also carried over for multiplayer. And then you've got all your Halo 3, Halo 4 multiplayer and maps as well. And there are various playlists in there built in that utilize the maps and modes from across all those games. You can choose just to do Halo 4 multiplayer. You can choose to do a Team Slayer playlist that does Halos 1, 2, and 3 maps included. I'm having fun with it. I mean, I've always been a Halo fan, but I have found that it's a little disorienting and confusing because there are things in the various versions of Halo that aren't found in the other ones, such as dual wielding, such as sprinting and power-ups, such as the various power levels of the same weapon throughout the various iterations. So in the original Halo, that pistol was very, very lethal, right?
And that's the best weapon in all of the Halo games, hands down.
Yeah, indeed. But they nerfed it just a little bit as it went through the various iterations of Halo. Obviously, not quite the super lethal weapon it was in the original. So if you're in a playlist where you're playing Halo 1 through 4 and it's mixing them all up, you may do a match in original Halo and you can't sprint and you've got like limited weapons and everything's just like a little more condensed in terms of the maps. And then you may immediately go to a big Halo 4 map next. And so like switching back and forth those slight variations in the game modes and control schemes is still something that I'm very much getting used to and have to remember how to play each iteration of Halo, kind of reteach myself all over again. But I'm having fun with it. On the Titanfall side, I did not think I would necessarily like this game because there were a lot of comparisons to Call of Duty and such when it came out, and it sort of was supposed to be this really big deal, but then you kind of fell off and you didn't hear much about it shortly after the launch of the Xbox One. So I didn't go in with big expectations to like it, but I actually find Titanfall very interesting and sort of deep in ways that most first-person shooters are not. And I'm surprised at how much I like Titanfall. I can see why it became less popular over time and didn't stick around for a long time because there are a lot of things jumbled in and thrown in there. With fighting in the mech suits, fighting on the ground as a pilot. It's all multiplayer, right? So even the campaign is multiplayer, but sometimes you're on the enemy side and sometimes you're on the quote-unquote friendly side. And the campaign missions that you go through in multiplayer, sometimes you're playing the same mission that you just played if you back out for some reason and come back into the multiplayer. So you're kind of jumping into wherever the server happens to be in the playlist at the time. So I haven't gotten the consistent campaign experience from start to finish because it doesn't do that. It just throws you into a random campaign mission and you may be on one side or the other side from mission to mission. So there are some sort of story elements and things going on, but I have no idea what's going on. I mean, it's just a mishmash. There are these minions on the map along with the actual human players and mechs And so you're also fighting these AI-controlled minions on the ground who are a little weaker. But all in all, the game is just a lot of chaos. It's not quite got a thread all the way through. The tutorial doesn't really show you everything that you can do, and you kind of have to learn some stuff on your own. But it's cool. I mean, big fighting mechs is a pretty cool idea. The fact that you can like run and jump on the back of enemy mechs and like hack them open and start shooting into their control panel to take them out. The fact that you can put your mech on autopilot to kind of cover you, or you can get into it and drive it if you think you're more effective of a fighter when you're in it. Pretty deep game. I mean, I'm surprised by like how much variation there is, and it really puts a new wrinkle in the whole competitive online multiplayer first-person shooter thing that I enjoy. But it's a little disconnected. There's just like slight UI tweaks and the thing with the minions and just like making the game modes and missions connected together a little better would be great. But I'm very much enjoying that game. I'm going to keep playing it, but I can see why it wouldn't hold someone's attention for a long time because it seems a bit discombobulated.
Yeah, that seems like a good first try, and then most likely when they bring out a part 2, it's going to just make refinements to all those little rough edges. One thing I thought was interesting that I heard about the game was, I know in a lot of shooters, whenever there's a mech or something you can ride in, or some kind of vehicle like in Halo or Call of Duty, etc., it is something you want to be in because it's definitely stronger. You definitely have an advantage with it. Whereas in Titanfall, the levels are designed such that there's not necessarily a clear advantage for being in the mech suit. Sure, you're stronger and you have much more firepower, but you're not as mobile, and a lot of the level is designed such that, you know, the pilots can run around and sneak around without ever having to deal with the mechs so much. The mechs can't go everywhere. And of course, it's easy to get on their backs. And so it's kind of a balance trying to figure out when it is better to be in the mech versus when it is not. And that's something I thought looked very appealing about the game when it first came out. A year or two ago, whenever it was.
Yeah, and the mission structure and level design actually forces you out of the mechs in some ways. Because there are some of these missions, actually a lot of the missions are very similar, where there are control points within buildings that you have to go and capture, kind of like a King of the Hill sort of mode. And so you're trying to capture 2 or 3 points on the map and hold them from the enemy team. So if you're inside a building holding and defending that actual point, you can't take your mech inside the building. It's too big. So you're going to put it on autopilot outside to kind of try and defend and keep people from coming in. Or you could get in it, but if you're in it, you know, you have to make sure that you're coordinating with your teammates to be out of their mechs and inside the building. So it does force you to make some very critical decisions in that way. So
that sounds pretty good. You know, if I ever come down or actually get a 360 for myself, that's something I definitely want to try out.
You mean a 1?
God dang it. The 360 is the biggest number. It should be the last one.
I don't disagree.
I mean, that's probably the reason I don't have an Xbox One, actually. It's because every time I think I want one, I just think 360, and it's like, oh, there's one right there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because I logged into Xbox Live for the first time in a year plus. You know, I've not had my 360 for quite a while because I got rid of it when I got my PS4. And most of the people on my friends list are still playing their Xbox 360. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I also tried some mobile games this week. One of them is called Love Live School Idols, which, if you're thinking that's a very Japanese name for a mobile game, you would be correct.
Sounds like, okay, it's going to be one of 2 things based on that name. Actually, one of 3 things, though 2 of them are very similar, and let me just throw out guesses. 1, very skimpily clad high school girls and some kind of monsters, and they fight each other. And that will be either in some kind of text-based choose-your-own-adventure game, or just some kind of cheap actiony game, or it is a rhythm game. Those are the only possible options with that name.
Well, you would be correct in that it is a rhythm game with some scantily clad schoolgirls in it who are very anime-ish. Yeah, so I actually heard about this on from a guest who was on Jeff Kanata's DLC podcast that I listen to every week. So if you like this podcast, I bet you would like Jeff Kanata's DLC podcast too. So give him a listen. But I decided to download it. I'm not big on rhythm games. I think you're probably a bigger fan of them than I am.
I platinumed Hatsune Miku Project Diva F right here. So
yes,
I will admit that proudly. That is hard to do.
Yeah, the art style I enjoyed. Honestly, I downloaded it because it was described on that show as a game where you recruit girls to be part of your singing group, and then you feed them other girls you don't want to make them stronger.
What?
In reality, that's not really what you're doing. There's a mechanic where if you want to train your singers, you actually have to sort of burn the other cards and not put them into your group, and you use those attributes to boost your other singers. So you're constantly like building and managing your team of 9 girls. I don't know, not really my type of game. Obviously, I enjoy the art style and the there's kind of like a loose story mode that's sort of anime and fun. But I'd spent like half an hour with it and I was done. But for folks who are into that, it seems like a pretty quality game of that sort. I also downloaded a mobile game that was recommended to me actually by a coworker called Ingress, which I think is actually developed by Google. Also only spent a few minutes with that before deleting it. Not my type of game either, but this is an interesting app more so than game, but you choose a side and there are portals or checkpoints in the real world, and you basically walk to them and capture them for your team. So it's using the location feature in your phone, and you are kind of going to various landmarks, and basically it's about like how many people on your team can go there and capture that landmark before the other team does, and sort of own these various portals and kind of spawn new portals and own your location. So really, I think it's an app sort of geared to get you to get up and move around your community a little bit. So an interesting concept, but again, it's more of a strange kind of geolocation-based app than a game.
Sounds almost a little bit like that, in my opinion, poorly done Assassin's Creed Liberation multiplayer mode.
It was very much like the AC Liberation multiplayer mode on Vita, with the exception that like you actually have to go somewhere to play this, whereas that one just gave you bonus points for being near the geolocated home.
So it's more of a game than the game made by a major third-party AAA developer, is what you're saying.
That is exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. I also had a chance to do some PC gaming this week. I started a game that has been out a little while, and I'd heard a few people say is kind of neat.
Was it Nox, and did you hear us talking about it?
It wasn't Nox. You know what? I have yet to get to play Nox. I'm actually having some technical issues getting Nox to fire up, and I've been in touch with GOG customer support trying to get that one going. I can't figure out what the issue is there, but that is one good old game that has yet to fire up appropriately for me. But I did play a different game on GOG that was on sale. Not actually a retro game, but I did get it through Good Old Games, and that is Kentucky Route Zero. Have you heard of this game by chance?
I have heard about it only once, and that was about, I'd say, 7 seconds ago. I've heard of the state of Kentucky, and so I've heard about probably a third of it. It has anything to do with the state.
It actually, I guess it does take place in Kentucky because there's some coal mining references and things of that nature. But it's a typical point-and-click adventure game. So if you're into those, which I tend to not be, the last one that I really truly loved was Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which was early to mid-90s. I haven't actually been all that compelled by the Telltale Walking Dead or any of those more modern point-and-click adventure games. But Kentucky Route Zero is indeed interesting. I finished Act 1. I believe there are 3 acts. I do intend to hopefully circle back and finish those at some point. But in the first act, it starts out a little slow, but the story is pretty well done because there are some things that happen toward the end that made me just kind of take a step back and be like, oh, I really want to know what happens next. And so it's going to be the writing for this game that pulls me along through and makes me want to play more of it, more so than the gameplay. But you're really not doing anything more than clicking to an area to walk to on the screen and then clicking on a couple objects to interact with them. It's not even like most adventure games you might be used to where you have to do a lot of puzzle solving, like find something in the environment and then figure out what to combine it with or use it on. This is more or less just exploring kind of left or right through various areas. There's a little bit of interaction. Maybe it gets deeper in Act 2. But right now it's more just exploring a story that's kind of sort of Twin Peaks-ish, almost kind of creepy.
I don't know. I've not really been... The only point-and-click adventure game I've ever really liked, I think, was Zero Escape.
Zero Escape. Well, yeah.
Had puzzles and a crazy story.
Yeah, I played that on the Vita. One of them. I know there are multiple.
Yeah. Did you finish it?
I did, but only once, and there are like 500 endings. Yeah, I only did once.
Oh yeah, once you get through about half of the endings, it is completely different than you expect. Like what you probably think the story is completely different from what it actually is because you get more information with each ending. But I almost want to spoil it for you, actually.
All right, well maybe we can do that after the show because I doubt I'll circle back to that one.
Right.
I also forgot last week to talk about, I had played a little bit of a game called Styx Master of Shadow, which was on PS Plus for July. I don't know if you had a chance to download this to your PS Plus and try it, but it's a third-person stealth adventure game starring a little goblin guy. I honestly spent like an hour with it and I was done, primarily just because the stealth mechanics are... I felt a little rough around the edges for me. Like I felt as though I was getting detected, even though I was in no way in the detection zone of enemies. And like they would see me through walls and kind of weird stuff. And then after I died a couple times from that and the checkpoint system sent me like way back, way previously to the progress I had made at that point, I was just kind of done. I wasn't really a big fan of Styx. Also, the combat mechanics. I realize it's a stealth game, but they did put combat mechanics in it when you do get detected. They're horrible. Like, you push the button and there's a really long lag, like a huge delay.
Yeah, I tried it out, and I've had the same problem you mentioned, which I'm not a big fan of stealth games to begin with for one major reason. I don't feel rewarded by actually playing stealthily. I only feel punished for not playing stealthily, and that doesn't really incentivize me to want to play it. But when you couple that with, sloppy hit detection and, laggy, poor controls, it just completely turned me off to the game.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So I also finally, when I bought my PS4, I got The Last of Us Remastered with it. It was actually like one of the reasons I bought a PS4 because that previous year, every major gaming outlet had named The Last of Us on PS3 its game of the year. And so I really wanted to get the remastered version for PS4 and try it and was super excited. I was like, oh, this game is going to be amazing. But it's really continuing a trend for me that actually started on last week's show when I talked to Nick about playing Journey, which was the game of the year from a lot of people that I did not really enjoy that much. I am only 3 or 4 hours into The Last of Us so far. I hope it gets fun. I am not enjoying that game yet. Some of the same issues we just talked about with Styx, except for the stealth mechanics actually are, they do work well. It's just they're different from the stealth mechanics in other games because not only can some of the enemies see you, but some of them can kind of detect vibration, I guess, and they can hear you more so than they would in other stealth games. So there's just an added layer on there that kind of, and there's a lot of like ammunition conservation that you have to do. It actually feels to me a lot like a Resident Evil game, which I have not really been a big survival horror fan in the past. I don't like these depressing, dark, like games where I'm just always stressed out the entire time I'm playing it. I've never been a fan of Resident Evil except for RE4 for that very reason. And so far, The Last of Us is making me feel that way. I hope it kind of brightens up and gets a little more actiony and fun at some point. So I know one thing that you never stop playing, just like I haven't stopped playing Rocket League, is Super Smash Bros. on Wii U, and I believe there has yet again been some new DLC there. Have you tried that out?
Yeah, that's the reason I can't stop playing it, because once I think I'm done, Nintendo releases some DLC. I got to get back in the game, play the new stuff, and it is really turning into, in my opinion, the best Smash Bros. Game ever. You melee people, you can disagree all you want, but it's better. First off, it's really balanced, and because they figured out the internet, Nintendo did. I don't know how, because I still don't understand it.
It's a series of tubes.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, they're actually, making balanced updates to the characters, and in particular, characters that I wanted to be good with, that I sucked with, like Palutena, have been buffed. But more importantly, they have been releasing more classic levels from the N64 era. So the game already had the classic Donkey Kong Smash level from Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64, which was one of my favorite levels. They about a month ago released the Kirby level, and they released Peach's Castle and Zelda's Castle. I'm blanking on the specific name of the level right now.
Is it Hyrule Castle?
Hyrule Castle, that's
yeah.
it. And that is, if anybody that played Smash on the N64 knows, that is the level you played
yes.
about 85% of the time, and they brought it back.
That's my favorite Smash level of all time.
Exactly, and they brought it back, and it is exactly the same. It looks great. It plays exactly the same. That stupid tornado is on the level. It is awesome, and I've just been playing that like the entire time. And if you're one of those, people that can only play on flat levels with no obstacles because you're competitive, then they also have an Omega version where it's basically, that level and just it's flat. So I guess it's really just Final Destination with a picture of the level in the background, in my opinion. So, something there for everybody. They also introduced a tournament mode, which is something they've been talking about since last November, actually, or September, whenever they released that whole 50 Facts extravaganza video, Nintendo Direct. And tournament mode's kind of a mixed bag for me, actually. They do have standard tournaments where you can, enter up to 64 players, and you may have to wait in the lobby for up to 15 minutes so that it can fill up or populate with other competitors. And in that, there are ones where for glory mode, where there'll be one-on-one fights, and then you just go up, with single elimination all the way up until, the typical standard tournament format. There's also the for fun type mode, where there will be more than just two people fighting and people progress up, and there are items, though even if it's 4-player matches or 1v1 matches, the very final match is always a 1v1 regardless of which mode, which I think is kind of cool because only one can be the best. But what's really cool is you can actually create your own tournaments and set the rules. But this is where my problem comes in. You cannot customize a tournament that is just only 1v1s, which it might be an oversight, It might be something that they'll patch in later, but that's something that's kind of disappointing, in my opinion. Another issue is some of the labels whenever you're creating your custom tournament are a little confusing. For example, there's a section that says item switch on or off. When you're setting the tournament, if you turn that to off, there will still be items, because all that does is change whether you can customize the items in the tournament or just leave it with default. There's actually a separate setting you have to find to turn the items off. And so I know a lot of people were having issues thinking they turned the items off for this big tournament they made, and there are still items there, and it's ruining what they thought there would be. So it's a mixed bag, but definitely a welcome addition. Just more and more stuff getting added to the game every day. The tournament mode was not an addition to the 3DS version, but everything else was. So there's still something for you whether you have the 3DS or Wii U versions. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that until next week whenever I download something new. Although one thing I don't know about, I don't know if you know or the viewers know, Nick will be attending SmashCon next weekend. And
yeah,
he and
he who shall not be named.
Exactly. They are competing in the team matches. But what I don't know, and what I think would be interesting to find out, is whether these new additions or the stat changes will be incorporated into the tournament, or if it's frozen to a particular previous version of the game. Because it could change things up depending on how
there's actually a pretty extensive FAQ on Super Smash Con's website. They may have addressed that. I'm not 100% certain, but they have a lot of information on there. And yeah, since you brought that up, Nick and his teammate, who shall not be named, are going to be competing at Super Smash Con, actually, I believe, starting on Saturday night and going into Sunday. Actually, Nick texted me, so around 7 o'clock Saturday, and then going into Sunday morning, they're going to be competing. The Super Smash Con actually runs Thursday through Sunday, and we'll actually be there. We won't have a live show next week because we will be at Super Smash Con. I'm going to be recording some interviews with the competitors, the devs, the vendors, the exhibitors there. And so be on the lookout for that show. It should be super, super fun, super smashy. And we'll be talking all about what we found out at Super Smash Con, and talking to some pretty interesting people, hopefully. So stay tuned for that show.
And maybe you'll get a chance to actually play the new Smash. Might be able to bring you over to the Wii U finally.
Man, I don't know. Maybe. I'm looking forward to the retro arcade stuff that's supposed to be set up there. That's gonna be my jam, I bet.
Nice.
Yeah. So if any of the listeners are going to be at Super Smash Con, hit us up. Let us know. Maybe we can do a little segment with you for the show and get some of our fans on the show. All right, so that's what we've played this week. I think I hear a little something inbound. I believe that's the news motorcycle coming in. So this week in news, pretty light, but a few things to talk about. Obviously we have X-Men, the whole Age of Apocalypse movie coming out soon, which is going to be pretty awesome, especially with Olivia Munn as Psylocke. That should be pretty nice. But there's also a Gambit movie slated for, I think, next fall, so 2016. It's going to start filming in October, and rumors are right now that Channing Tatum has been selected to star as Gambit. He doesn't really strike me as a raging Cajun.
Man, I don't care. I would just like I know it's not going to happen, but I would like them to use the outfit that Gambit wore in the animated 1990s series, and I want him to be wearing that in the live action movie, because that looks so ridiculous, and I think it would be great.
That would be pretty fun, actually. Yeah. So we'll be on the lookout for more news coming out of the Gambit movie, but I don't know. I feel like someone a little rougher around the edges would have been, actually, like the guy Joshua Holloway who played Sawyer on Lost would be my pick.
Hmm.
Either and if he doesn't get that role, make him the new Sabretooth or the new Wolverine someday.
Yeah. Actually, I'm blanking on his first name. I think Chris Pratt. I think if he were able to pull off the accent, I think actually, just because he kind of has the messy hair and stuff, and at least in that in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, he was built in a way that I think would be pretty good for Gambit.
Agreed. Although if there's ever a Star-Lord Gambit crossover, they wouldn't be able to do it.
With modern computer technology, I don't see why not.
Fair enough. So also, we've talked a lot about the Final Fantasy VII remake on this show, especially our post E3 show. I think we gushed a lot about how much we love Final Fantasy VII and how much we're looking forward to this. So, strangely enough, that was episode 7. So go back and listen to that show if you missed it. But some news came out from director Tetsuya Nomura this week, and he said that the remake for Final Fantasy VII will have dramatic but recognizable changes to the combat. This was something we actually talked about. We speculated on because I think I said I actually want the combat to change, but I don't know if you and Nick were on board.
Yeah, I'm not as on board because I actually liked the old turn-based battle system because it wasn't, like earlier turn-based battle. I like the active time battle system where you set it up to be active instead of wait, and then if you take too long to make your choices, the enemies are still attacking you. So there's a combination of choosing your move in a tactical fashion such that it would be the best choice, but also having your items and everything organized in a way you can quickly access what you'll need, while also realizing that it's time sensitive, and so you're not focusing so much on your reflexes so much as your ability to command the situation, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I wasn't on board with that. But what I find more interesting is the phrase dramatic but recognizable. What does that mean? Because if it's a dramatic change, I think I would recognize that. You don't really need to say that it's recognizable.
Well, I think he means recognizable as in it's not going to be totally like it's not going to be not an RPG battle system. So I don't think we're going to get like a game where you're fighting like real time, like Kingdoms of Amalur or something. I think we're probably still going to have random battles. We're probably still going to go to a separate like battle arena screen every time you enter a battle, but sounds like it's not going to be turn based.
I have no idea why my first interpretation of that sentence was the least plausible interpretation.
I don't know, man. You're reading it like a legal document, perhaps.
Oh my gosh. Actually, that's it. I would like the change as long as it's still somewhat turn-based. Like if they did it the way they do in Paper Mario, for example, or not Paper Mario 2, or Mario RPG. If they did something like that, I would be more interested.
Have you ever played Eternal Sonata?
Eternal Sonata? I've listened to a sonata, and I've seen one driving.
Fair enough. You know what? Do you still have your 360?
Yeah, man. It's literally right over there.
I'm gonna recommend something to you that you will not be sorry about because I know the type of games you like. Go find a copy. It's got to be cheap. You got to be able to find it somewhere. But get a copy of Eternal Sonata. It's an RPG on the Xbox 360, which there weren't many, but it's a JRPG on the 360 with a very interesting story. It's actually the entire RPG takes place within Frédéric Chopin's Fever Dreams, the composer. And the RPG, the reason I bring it up is the battle system is very cool, and it's very much what I think Final Fantasy VII Remake might end up looking like, and kind of what I hope it ends up looking like, because it's one of those where you have like a limited amount of time and steps that you can move around on the battlefield and take actions before it kind of freezes you and gives the enemies a turn. But while you're within those action point timers, you can actually do anything you want: attack, run away, cast spells, use items, whatever. And it's really cool. You need to actually, like, today find that game and play. I know you would love that game.
All right, I'll I guess I'll try that definitely. It's there's just so many things to play and not enough time, and I tend to waste half of my game time playing old games I've beaten like a bunch of times since I was 8. So
Yeah, I know. I feel you. So one last news bite this week. Nintendo released their 2016 financial projections, and every other major game on there had a release date or a release window. But Zelda Wii U was just listed with a bunch of things on there as TBD, which a lot of industry analysts are saying means that it's now less likely that Zelda Wii U will come out in 2016, potentially being pushed to 2017 now, which really makes this start to look like an NX launch title to me.
it would be a good launch title. I mean, that's quite frankly the first thing I picked up with my original Wii was the launch title that was a Zelda game, even though the GameCube version was probably better because Link was still left-handed in the GameCube version. But so yeah, no, it seems like something that seems very possible to me. Although at the same time, they keep saying that they're going to release it on the Wii U, and I don't know if they'll go back on that. I know they tend to, if they say they're going to do something, they eventually do it, whether it's limited or not. So, they could potentially release it on both systems.
Yeah, exactly. They've done that before, right, with Twilight Princess. So,
or either that, or maybe the NX is something that could potentially be backwards compatible. I don't know. I mean, so you could release it on both like that. I know there were a lot of Game Boy games that also worked for the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, and it had extra features in the newer version. So
remind me, Skyward Sword was a Wii title, right? Original
yes.
Wii, late in the life. So initially, I was thinking that Nintendo would never skip an entire console generation without putting a Zelda game on there. But the Wii U audience, I feel like, is so small, and I feel like the people who are part of that hardcore Wii U audience are already happy enough with Smash and Splatoon and Bayonetta 2 and all those great things on Wii U. I wonder if, given that small audience, Nintendo wouldn't sort of waste development hours, and they realize if they ever launch a system again with a Zelda game, that it could be tremendous boost. So I kind of see Nintendo, maybe they very much are prepping the next Zelda game to be that NX launch title, to help maybe try to propel them back into first place. And then, yeah, maybe they'll do like a watered down version of it for Wii U as well, so that they're still living up to that promise. But
yeah,
very, very interesting to see this.
Right. I mean, well, they don't have to worry about not having a Zelda game on the Wii U because they did re-release Wind Waker for it, which is, if they had to re-release any Zelda game, I think that's probably the best one to do. Aside for A Link to the Past, if they made a 3D version of that, I would be, pretty excited.
Yeah,
so,
as far as the 3D Zeldas go, you can't. Even though Wind Waker is not a favorite of mine, you can't go wrong because the art style holds up so well.
Yes, and I know when I picked it up, I used to just leave the game on in the background just to listen to some sweet cartoon pirate tunes while I would, study for the bar exam, for example.
Nice. Awesome. Well, all right. So let's talk a little non-gaming in a section we call We Have Hobbies.
All right.
All right. So I hear that you've been watching a little Parks and Rec, which is a show that I gave a chance very early on and never circled back to. It wasn't for me then. It wasn't quite as much like The Office as I had hoped. But apparently, have you been enjoying it?
Yes, I've been enjoying it a lot. Actually, I'll have to ask, when you tried it out, did you just try only season 1 or did you start from
Yeah, it was definitely season 1 when I gave it a shot.
Yeah, see, season 1 actually is kind of different than the rest of them. Like, starting with season 3 is where I think it gets really good. Because I don't know if you know this, but originally in development, early on, they were thinking maybe it would be an Office spinoff, or before they changed some other things about it. And one of the complaints about season one actually was that the main character, Leslie Knope, seems kind of like a doofus, like almost like the equivalent of Michael Scott, but the setting didn't seem right. But they rewrote it, and so it's actually similar in that it's that mockumentary style, but rather than it just being about the boring everyday lives of office workers, it's about the ridiculous bureaucracy of local government work, but it has an optimistic tone instead of a more cynical tone, in my opinion, like The Office had, which is different. So no, I really like it. The jokes are pretty funny. A lot of dry humor in it, but not as dry as The Office. And the thing I find interesting is a lot of it seems far-fetched, but surprisingly, a lot of it is accurate in terms of what one might experience in government work. Just briefly you worked in the government briefly, even though it was a military, but there's something.
Well, I still certainly work with a lot of government clients in my job. So.
I remember reading about the development of the show, and in the show, there's a character, Ron Swanson. He's a libertarian who works for the government and is paid by taxpayers, essentially, but he hates the government and wants to dismantle the government. And it seems like, well, that doesn't make sense, but he was modeled after an actual government employee in California that they interviewed during the development of the show, who is working for it just so he can mess it up and make it as inefficient as possible. And so a lot of the characters and a lot of the things that happen in the show are modeled after that type of thing. For example, takes them years to get a park made, even though it's something so simple. And they interviewed people in California. I don't remember which branch of their government, because I don't keep notes about parks and recreation handy for just such an occasion as a podcast. But they said it took them like 18 years for something to develop something similar in real life, and how for public town hall meetings, the only people that do ever seem to come are people that are opposed to you and just want to yell at you or complain about something you did. And so seeing that stuff, it's almost like the show's humorously just showing what that type of thing is like, but also, of course, with all the fancy TV niceties, such as a happy story and whatnot.
Nice. A little bit of social commentary then.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of social commentary in there. I very much enjoyed the episodes about birth certificate, for example.
Oh, right.
There were episodes where the main character, when she was running for city council, they wanted her actual birth certificate because they didn't believe that she was from the town, because they really just didn't want her elected, and so she had to go find it. No one believed her, and then they called her a liar, and then just government shutdown based on. So it actually, unlike The Office, took a lot of contemporary events that were happening and had some of the show revolve around that, which, I mean, they're not contemporary right now because I literally just blew through about 5 seasons in the past half week. That's why I only had 2 games played, taking a page from Nick's book. But yeah, so I think maybe if you did try it out again, I'd say start from season 3.
By the way, I'm glad you mentioned Nick and his Netflix watching that we always make fun of him for instead of playing games, because it's perfect that he's not here this week, because I want to encourage all the listeners to do a little something. So on PSN, Nick is NickmanZ666. That's NickmanZ666. I want everybody to friend him, and then afterwards, I want you to go into his recent activity, find where he's been watching Netflix, and like that activity. I want all of us to subtly troll Nick.
It was funny, actually. Nick called me up. You did that, actually.
Yes, I did.
Already, while he was watching Netflix, and a notification popped up on his screen saying that you liked an activity of his, and he called me up. He's like, I don't even have to go to the you. I already know. He just likes the fact that I'm watching Netflix. He's just messing with me.
Yeah. So
Oh, actually, I'm gonna have to show right now to the visual viewers, and I'll talk to the people listening via audio. Nick is actually watching the podcast right.
What? Why is he watching?
Yep.
Why isn't he here if he's watching?
I don't know.
No, foiled. Our
He
plan is
says,
foiled.
"Shut up!" A page from Nick's book.
Man.
Yeah,
He got us, man. He got us. He
why
outsmarted
aren't you in
us.
the podcast right now? You could join right now. And,
You could
listen
join
to
right now. You have the invite, Nick. You have the invite. Okay, so that's Parks and Rec. One of the things I've been doing non-gaming, I talked a lot about the new canon Star Wars audiobooks lately, and I'm really enjoying those.
Nick Cannon Star Wars audiobooks?
No, not Nick Cannon, the new canon.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
They're pretty wild and out, though. I will say that. I really enjoyed Tarkin. I thought Lords of the Sith was so. And I talked about both of those on previous episodes. So if you missed those reviews, go check them out. Go check out those episodes. But I just finished Dark Disciple by Christy Golden, and it is by far the best one that I have listened to so far. And I think one of the reasons is that it's actually an adaptation of scripts from what was going to be the 7th season of the Clone Wars animated series, which Disney considers part of the official canon. So all that stuff's still, good to go as far as the Star Wars universe is concerned. This is kind of like a double recommendation because I don't think people realize like how true to Star Wars the Clone Wars animated series was, and like how mature of an animated series that was. It's more what you would expect from like the original trilogy than the prequels, even though it has the prequel characters in it and takes place between 2 and 3. It really has more of that heart and soul of stuff that's really Star Wars. I think that series, it's 6 seasons and way better than any of the prequel movies by far. And some really cool characters in there, including a Sith character called Asajj Ventress, who is actually Count Dooku's apprentice. So you don't see her in the movies, but she became his apprentice between 2 and 3, and she's all throughout the animated series. And this audiobook, which is also a regular book, focuses on Asajj Ventress and a Jedi Master named Quinlan Vos. And so it's a bit of a romance / team up story between the two of them. And so you have this former Sith apprentice and this Jedi Master who are on a mission together to assassinate Count Dooku, essentially. And one of the reasons that the audiobook is so good, I mentioned this about all the other Star Wars audiobooks. It's so well produced. The voiceover work is amazing. The sound effects are amazing. The music is in there. It's just a perfect little package, and it felt just like experiencing more episodes of the Clone Wars for me. And so I really liked it. They were able to do things that are a little more mature than what they could do even in that animated series. And so it's just a great story, very compelling. And obviously, that they don't kill Count Dooku because he's still alive when episode 3 happens, and he's killed by Obi-Wan and Anakin. So spoilers if you haven't seen Star Wars prequels by now. But so unlike the Lords of the Sith book, where I said it wasn't all that interesting because that the assassination of Vader and the Emperor wouldn't be successful, this one actually is still interesting because of the relationship between all the characters. Yoda's in there, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Anakin. Everything is just perfect about this story. I really liked it a lot. If the only negative thing I have to say about it is in the audiobook version, the voice for Mace Windu sounds like a Texas white guy, like total like redneck like Texas accent white guy. And obviously we know Mace Windu's played by Samuel L. Jackson in the films, so that's a little weird. But otherwise, very awesome. Everybody should go listen to Dark Disciple.
I would like to listen to a book where Samuel L. Jackson is the voice actor for every character.
I could be down with that. All right, so we've talked about what we've played this week. We talked about news. We talked about some non-gaming. I think we can get close to wrap it up with a little bit of advice, like we always dole out in a segment called "Call the Doctor." So I just have one little piece of advice. I mentioned I've been playing Titanfall, and I just do the objectives for crying out loud. Like I am reminded now, being back on Xbox Live, why I prefer PSN. Because on PSN, whenever I get put with random people to play a game, they're like 30 something people, like kind of our age range. And it seems like people are actually like smart and like doing what they're supposed to be doing for that multiplayer mission. Whereas on Xbox Live, I always get paired up with these like very young children who have no idea like what is actually going on. And so in Titanfall, I'll hear like these high pitched yet to hit puberty voices like screaming about why are they dying and stuff. It's because they're just off fighting in some corner killing people, but that's not actually helping capture a control point or the mission objective. So my advice this week: do the freaking objectives in Titanfall. Thank you.
Is that advice for them, or is that advice just so you can win?
It's advice for life.
All right.
All right, so I guess we can wrap up the show now, even though Nick is still watching and also has logged into our shared Google Doc of the show notes. So way to go, Nick, dropping the ball. He's prepping for SmashCon, getting ready to compete.
Actually, just hold up. I'm actually going to check right now and see if he is on Netflix.
Well, now that you said that, he's gonna log off. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. We have
a guest speaker.
Wait. I believe a new challenger has approached, is how they would say that in Smash. Nick, have you joined the podcast here in time for us to do farewells?
Yeah, well, you don't watch it, so.
What?
I don't know. What is he on dial-up?
What the heck is going on?
You sound like a robot.
Man, I don't even know what he is trying to do.
Probably am.
He's totally frozen on my screen right now, so I'm going to wrap up the show. Maybe he's probably using all of his bandwidth watching Netflix.
Whoa,
So-
he does have a Crunchyroll account, all right?
Oh, okay. Well, Crunchyroll, that's totally different. Maybe he can go play some school idols while he's watching Crunchyroll. So I just want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody who joined the live show this week, and all of you who download us each and every week via audio version, whether that's on iTunes or you listen to the podcast on Stitcher or our website or some other means. We're always doing the show live each week here on a live Google Hangout where you can participate, ask questions during the show. And, of course, each one of those live Hangouts gets archived on YouTube. Just search for the World Map Podcast. This has been episode 13. You can catch up with us on worldmapcast.com. We're on Twitter as @worldmapcast, and we're also on Facebook at facebook.com/worldmapcast. As always, we very much appreciate your 5-star reviews on iTunes, as well as any friends you can tell about the show and get them to listen. It really, if you think about it, it takes probably less than 60 seconds to give us a 5-star review on iTunes or tell a friend about the show. Maybe you can do both. That's a challenge. Go out there and try to do it. It really helps us. We really appreciate it. So if you like the show, share it. And until next time, remember, no live show next week. We'll be reporting from SmashCon and posting the podcast with all of our Super SmashCon interviews. Until next time, we're popping smoke.